Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960 AM. You know, I think the statistic is that 80% of Canadians have a blood relative in the United States. And I, like lots of you, also have blood relatives in the United States. And given what's going on with COVID-19, I thought I'd reach out to some of them to see what's happening. And so I connected up with cousins of mine, David and Bruce Ranney. And they're an interesting family, an interesting story. My mother's sister, Joy Ranney, in the 1940s during World War II, met Buck Ranney on the Alaska Highway during World War II and married him and moved to the United States and lived the rest of her life. Even though she was born and raised in Toronto, lived the rest of her life in the United States and raised three sons that all joined the American military. John, the eldest, joined the Army. Bruce, I believe, was a submariner, and David, you were what? You were in the Navy?
I was in the Navy on an aircraft carrier.
On an aircraft carrier, and I remember very fondly. I think it was John and David that came and visited us in Montreal during Expo '67, and John was in his dress whites and took us to 6 Expo 67 downtown Montreal. And my gosh, he must have been, I don't know, 17, 18, 19 years old, something like that. My gosh, the girls were very attracted to the American in the dress whites. And so that was one of my first introductions to my American cousins. Anyway, Bruce is in Atlanta, and David and Sophie are in Pensacola, Florida. And Atlanta and Georgia and Florida are two of the new hotspots. And so I thought we'd introduce you to them and ask them what's going on. So Bruce Ranney in Atlanta, Georgia, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks. And my family, we don't have the virus, so that's good.
That's great. And so
part of the problem is that the three things people are supposed to do, Georgians aren't doing them very well. So we spread this among ourselves quickly, and it goes faster and faster and faster.
What do you think about what's happening? Your governor has just now, I understand, made it illegal to mandate masks.
He has said we're not supposed to. It is illegal too, yes, but in Atlanta, Athens, and Savannah, the mayors have said you must wear a mask. So we've got a conflict going in here. The governor is suing the city of Atlanta.
And what do you think people's reaction is so far?
Atlantans are wearing the masks.
They are?
I don't live in Atlanta. I live in a suburb, Marietta.
Okay. And are people social distancing? Are they going out? Are they going to bars, or are they staying home?
They're going to bars.
They are. You know, it's interesting. I think one of the statistics is that the vast majority of infections in Georgia and Florida have been traced to either bars, restaurants, or weddings and funerals. And so it's these gatherings of people that have then ended up, spreading the infection.
The beach is also a spreader.
And
popular beaches in Georgia.
David, you're coming to us from Pensacola, Florida, so not the main part of Florida that most Canadians think of, but the Panhandle. But tell me what you think of what's happening in Florida right now.
Right, Pensacola has recently been identified by the White House as a red zone, meaning our infection rate of all the people being tested, we're up to 15% positive. And so they're trying to increase the testing around here. We are pretty much everybody's wearing masks, have been for some time. And we're just trying to be socially isolated and go out to the grocery store and but Bruce is correct. The beaches and the bars, our bars are currently shut down. You can have a food establishment that sells alcohol, but they can only seat at 50% capacity. So if you have like 125 or 150 seat restaurants, you can only do 50% of that.
So what do you think?
Masks required?
Sorry, go ahead.
David, are masks required?
Masks are required in Pensacola and Escambia County. The city of Milton, which is a neighboring county, initially required masks, and then the city council took it away and said they're not required but advised. So but you'll still see people without masks.
In interior places or exterior?
Interior.
Because in Toronto and Mississauga, it's now been mandated that you have to wear masks in interior places, but not exterior. And I think a lot of the science is that that a mask doesn't do much good outside.
Right. But yeah, it's pretty much whenever you're away from your family unit or home, you should have your mask on. Maybe not driving or anything, but
Now, what
yeah.
about groupings of people? Are there limits to how big the
10.
groups of people can be?
10.
10, really? And what about in Georgia, Bruce?
I'm not sure how big you can have a group here. 15, I think. Valerie says 15, but I'm not sure.
Oh, okay. Well, we're having an interesting chat with two of my cousins, Bruce Ranney and David Ranney, one from Marietta, Georgia, and one from Pensacola, Florida, about what's going on in the United States right now. We're going to take a break for some messages and come right back in just a second. So stay with us. Well, we're back on the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. Sophie's in the back there giving me what do you call that? I can't remember what the name for that is.
Hello.
But saying hello to me. It's wonderful to see you. So maybe I could just get a little bit of background, if I could, on the two of you. Bruce, you were a submariner, is that correct?
Yes.
In nuclear subs, I remember.
Nuclear sub.
And whereabouts, or are you allowed to say, whereabouts did you go?
I sailed in one that was home ported in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii for 2 years. Then I helped build one in Newport News, Virginia for 2 years.
And many trips around the world, or you can't tell me about that?
I went to some exciting places, but never around the world.
Oh, okay. Excellent. And what was it? How long were you in the Navy?
I was actually in the Navy for a total of 30 years, active for 8.
Excellent. And then after that, you got into computer business, I believe, correct?
IBM salesman, just like your daddy.
And how long did you do that?
30 years.
And you've been in Georgia for most of the last 30 years?
I retired here in Georgia. I've been here 35, 36 years now.
And you grew up in West Virginia and Alabama, I think?
Ohio.
High school in Alabama. I went
High
to
school.
grammar school in Ohio.
Okay. And then your parents were in Virginia. Did you were you with them at that point in their life?
They moved to Virginia when I was a senior in college.
Oh, okay. And David, what about you? You were in the Navy as well?
Yes, I was. I was on the USS Lexington. It's an aircraft carrier based out of Pensacola. Basically, I was the communications officer responsible for ship-to-shore communications, not only for the ship, but also making sure that the air boss communicated with the airplanes. It was pretty easy duty because we only went out to sea for about 5 days, max 14 days at a time, and then came back in. Unlike Bruce, who would disappear for months at a time, this was nice. We were home most every weekend.
And you're
off the deck.
Yeah, I drove the ship. I got to drive the ship, the carrier, in and out of port and out at the Gulf doing carrier operations.
fantastic. And
Yeah.
your older brother, John, was in the Army in Vietnam, I believe, correct?
He was. Yes. He was in Vietnam, was wounded, went to Japan to rehabilitate, and then went back to Vietnam and finished his tour of duty, and then came back and started work in Michigan for Continental Can.
So your father, Buck, was in the Army, and that's how we met my mom's sister, Joy. I presume that's what led the three of you all to get military, to follow military careers?
Let me correct this. First of all, he was in the Army Air Corps.
Okay.
Which was sort of like the Air Force, but it was in the Army at the time.
Okay, I did not know that. Thank you.
And my mom worked on the Alcan Highway, not the Alaska Highway, the Alcan Highway.
Oh, what was the Alcan Highway?
Alaska Canadian.
It's the same.
It's the same thing.
But the name is different. Canadians always put the can in there, Alcan Highway.
I always heard it was the Alaska Highway, so that's great that we have some recognition for our part in it. And then Joy was very active in politics at one point in time. My memory is that she got very involved in the Democratic Party in Virginia. Is that correct?
Right. She served as the treasurer for the senator campaign for several senators.
And I
For the
remember
whole-
having.
She was active in League of Women Voters, which is very active group of women that want voting information to be available easily to people all over.
So given your military backgrounds and your, at least your mother's, political background, and my memory of your father was that he was very politically minded, though he worked for the government, so he probably couldn't be as politically active. But he had some very definitive points of view. What do you think about the leadership in both your states as well as the country right now in dealing with this COVID-19 crisis? Any opinions?
The county I live in, Cobb County, which is suburb area of Atlanta, was very early on to do shelter in place.
Oh, good.
And closed our schools in March of this year. So we've done a lot in this county, although now we're having redness. That's an explosion of cases, but we've done a lot toward slowing it down, its growth.
And that's the responsibility of what I don't know your governance structure. I apologize. Is there a mayor for the county, or what's the senior leadership of a county?
Commission chairman.
Commission chairman. And is that the individual that has sort of led in this issue?
Yes. He has a very good medical advisor.
And what about you, David? Any opinions?
Very similar. Escambia County and the city of Pensacola had shelter in place. Our schools quit meeting after spring break in March. Our beaches were actually shut down for 2 months. And that's probably one of the things that's causing the resurgence is the beaches have been open and the bars have been open and everything like that. But we also were shut down. It was kind of a governor mandated and reinforced by the local leadership.
So what's gone wrong? Right now, the per capita infection rate in the United States is, 3 or 4 times what it is in Canada. And both Florida and Georgia are 2 of the hotspots in all of the United States. Certainly New York was, California was, Seattle, Washington was, but are no longer. So California, I guess, has resurged back and is now a hotspot again. So what do you think went wrong?
I think we opened up too soon.
There was a lot of pressure. There was a lot of pressure to open up. President Donald Trump, was really encouraging governors to open up their states and get the economy back moving again. I think that, Texas was one of the first ones last ones to close and one of the first ones to open up, and has become a hot spot. So is it a choice of economy over health? Is that the problem?
Yeah, I think they are emphasizing business more than the health, yes.
Is that the same thing in Georgia, Bruce?
I agree. I agree with that totally. We're not doing the 3 things which you're supposed to do. Wash your hands, wear a mask, socially distant. The socially distant part is just not existent.
One of the things that sort of surprises me when I take a look at American news is how partisan this issue has become. And it's almost as if it is politically incorrect if you're a Republican to wear a mask or to accept the coronavirus as reality and something that we've got to do those 3 things. What has happened such that your politics has become so incredibly divided and partisan?
Well, this year is an election year. And so everyone has decided on one side or the other. Very few people have undecided so far. And the president says, we're going to grow the business so I can be elected. And he's got a lot of followers.
And so you think if it was an election year, we wouldn't necessarily have this partisanship?
We'd still be partisan, but not as much. What do you think, David?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we'd still have businesses closed. We weren't trying to show positive job growth and trying to help those unemployed, um, continuing in different ways to do that. I think we probably would not have opened up as soon as we did.
And so it's this pressure to show a positive economy that President Donald Trump and I guess some of the governors, because are all your
Right.
governors up for election in November or just some?
No, about a third, not necessarily that, but ours is not. I don't know. No, Bruce isn't either because they just got reelected. So no, the governors are not. Not all governors are up for reelection.
Now, my understanding, David, is that Florida, based on the recent national polls, for the first time, is very strongly going to go Biden. And I guess in the last couple of elections, it's been really at the margin as to whether it would go Democrat or Republican. But Biden has enjoyed a not a double digit, but a single digit lead and a sizable single digit lead in the current polls. What do you think's doing that? Is this COVID-19? Is it the impact of your governor? What's changing things?
Yeah, I think it's the COVID-19 and there's been a strong push to open up our elementary and primary schools. And I'm a believer that I think it's a little early to do that. They should maintain virtual learning for the time being. But I think that's going to be one of the most political hot button issues for this election cycle. Our
About whether
schools,
you should open schools or not?
yeah, our schools will open up in 3 weeks. Teachers go back in 2 weeks. And it's just with us being in the red zone and having so many cases and hospitals filling up, it's they need to put the brakes on that.
Well, David, our schools originally were announced as being open. Then there was a lot of backlash. Now they're virtual until possibly December.
Well, they're offering parents 3 options: virtual, in school, and then kind of like a combination virtual type schooling. And the parents have to select that option on Monday, tomorrow, and we'll see what happens. But I think we'll also see, like you did, Bruce, until a vaccine is present, that our schools will probably end up being virtual.
It's got to be a pretty tough decision for parents, particularly as more and more news comes out about long-term impacts. You've probably seen the statistics. It's interesting. The United States has the lowest age mortality in COVID-19 by about 10 years. So that the average age of death in Europe is about 10 years older. So for some reason, maybe it's because a lot more younger people have got infected, and it's just percentages. And or The Economist magazine supposes that it's average health for middle-aged Americans is worse than average health for middle-aged Europeans. And it certainly has been felt by a lower socioeconomic class that may have poor diet, poor health, etc. But it's interesting that, the impact of COVID-19 is hurting people at a younger age in the United States. And then we're getting a lot of information right now that, there's this respiratory disease comparable to Kawasaki disease that's impacting children. And then in addition, I had a doctor on a show that I had this past week that said that COVID-19 is having long-term respiratory impacts, long-term cognitive impacts that were similarly seen in SARS in 2003, and vascular impacts. And so that the vascular impacts can lead to blood clots and things like that, even after the respiratory problems seem to have been alleviated. So, it's got to be a pretty tough decision for people to send their kids off to school. And clearly kids are one issue, but teachers are another. And then the kids coming home and talking to the parents is another. Mom, you wanted to get in.
Yeah, I think our kids really psychologically want to get back to school. And they're saying it would be better for them to get back 5 days a week, not cycling back and forth between 5 days a week and 2 days a week, because they'll see fewer people, the same people. They'll be in the same bubble, in other words. if they're with them in school, instead of going from perhaps one babysitter to another on the days when they're not in school. And psychologically, they need that environment now. They've been out of school since sometime in March.
Yeah, but you know, Mom, in Orleans and Ottawa, you're in a very different situation because your infection rate right now is declining, and the positivity rate is in the low single digits. While the positivity rate in testing right now in Florida is above 20% almost.
You know,
And so a decision that, you know, a parent in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada would make versus Pensacola, Florida, or Atlanta, Marietta,
except that,
Georgia is
as
a
you
different one.
know, my daughter is keeping me in isolation and said she wants me in isolation until the end of the year. Karen is back working for Health Canada after being retired for 2 years. And she says they're really expecting a second wave, sort of the end of September or October, which could be worse than the original.
You think so?
Yep.
Well,
That's
you know,
what
it's
she-
ironic. Just today, I started reading this new book by Mary Trump, and I didn't realize, and it hasn't really been reported that I've heard that actually Donald Trump, President Donald Trump's grandfather, died of Spanish flu. Had you heard that?
I don't recall that.
So Fred Trump, Donald Trump's father, his father, Frederick Trump, who I guess came from Germany at one point in time, actually died in the 1919 Spanish flu. Kind of ironic that now he's fighting COVID-19, positive or negative, when his own grandfather had some issues 100 years ago. Anyway, we're going to take a break for some messages and come right back. Stay with us. Well, we're back on the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960, and I'm reaching out today to some of my cousins in the United States, Bruce and Valerie Ranney, and David and Sophie Ranney, who are coming to us, Bruce and Valerie from Marietta, which is just outside of Atlanta, Georgia, and David and Sophie from Pensacola, Florida, which is in the panhandle of Florida. And my mom, their aunt, my mom, Flora Crombie, is also on our show today from Ottawa, Ontario, and I'm coming in from Mississauga, Ontario. David, you were saying that you went back to church today.
Yes, well, today wasn't the first day. We've been back to church with social distancing. They do a deep clean. We have 3 services, and they do a deep clean between each service. There were no hymnals, no handouts, no order of worship, no Bibles or anything like that. Everything's done on a big screen, and every other pew is blocked off so you can't sit in it. And you're recommended to keep your mask on as much as you can, entering and leaving. There's plenty of hand sanitizer and masks available for those that don't have them. We've been
Any
doing
limits on the number of people?
Yes, we have not reached that limit yet, but yes, there would be a limit of 50%.
And when
And
you've
it's
got
very-
every second pew vacant, what about the pew you're in? Are you sitting only with family members, or are you mixed in with other people?
No, you're pretty much unless if there's another person on the pew, they're at least 6 to 8 feet away.
Right. But you can sit beside family units.
Yes, you can.
And-
Yes,
And do you
People
think
in your
people are
home.
comfortable with that, or are they?
pretty much. We initially had some choir singing, and right now we've gone down in the orchestra, and there's been no orchestra the last couple of weeks, but they're into a chorale, which is a very limited number of people in the choir law.
Why
Okay.
restriction on choir?
That's very been close communion, and also that's been in other areas been a red target area for a spread of COVID.
Have you been serving communion at all?
No communion.
Brian, can I step in for a moment?
Please, Valerie.
Our church has not decided to go back to real in-person services, not until August 9th. And even then, it's kind of up in the air.
Yep.
But we have virtual service, 2 different kinds of services in the morning and on Sunday morning. And we were served, well, we served ourselves communion today. Today was communion service, and we had communion at home with a virtual help from our.
Have we lost you?
Yep.
And what about you, Mom?
Yeah,
Has your church gone back?
No, we're all virtual. We have 6 churches actually that have gone together, putting on a broadcast every Sunday morning.
Yep.
And we get about 120 viewers, which is more. I mean, our church seats more than 400 by itself. So where the others have gone, we don't really know.
Right. So my church is also virtual. I just got a survey, I think this past week, asking about things that David was talking about in regards to would people feel comfortable with every second pew, and what about holding in hymnal and things like that. So I think they're planning on coming back, but it hasn't happened as of yet. Mallory, I wonder if I could turn to you. You said during the break that you were a teacher and that you have a sense of what teachers are feeling. What's that sense of how teachers are feeling?
Well, it's funny that when I said that, I realized that really and truly, they're kind of all over the place. There are some teachers who are very interested and excited and wanting to get back to the classroom and teach the children face to face, one-on-one or 1-on-15, whatever the thing might be at the time. But they're also very concerned about their own children, and they're concerned about bringing possibly the virus back to their families and to their parents as well. So they too, besides the parents being in this conundrum, the teachers are very much so. And they're torn between what they're being told to do by the districts and what they're being encouraged to do by the doctors and the powers that be. So it's a tough place to be all the way around.
Now, are the decisions being made on a statewide level, or are they being made by different counties or different boards of education?
They're being made by each individual board of education at this time. No one knows what's going to happen in the near future. We were Zooming in our Sunday school class this morning with someone who happens to be in Vero Beach, Florida, whose situation is very good when it comes to the COVID virus, and their schools are opening this fall in just a couple of weeks, face-to-face, in-person school, whereas our school is going to be opening virtually, at least until December, because we're not in a good place with the virus.
Well, it's interesting. One of the biggest differences between Canada and the United States is that there's far more centralized decision-making on COVID-19 in Canada. And it would appear that there's a lot more fragmented decision-making, and it's almost, I think that, one of the keys of your constitution and your political attitudes is states' rights, and that the states get to decide. But it's been very shocking to me looking at the different responses in Canada versus the United States, and how fragmented the response has been in the United States, where you've got governors and mayors almost competing for PPE, personal protective equipment, with each other, and bidding against each other, and respirators and ventilators, and all that is centrally procured for all of Canada in Canada. So it is a big difference. How do Americans feel about that?
I can tell you how I feel. I think I may be the most verbal one of this group, but I feel that it has been a crime that our president has not taken a better stand and a more comprehensive stand and a more scientific stand than he has, to pit the states against each other in procuring PPE and so forth. It has just been unbelievably cruel and not what our Constitution, our people are expecting. They expect leadership from the president, And in my way of thinking, he is not affording our country leadership in this way or in many others.
What about your governor?
Mhm.
He's much like the president. He is a, well, I won't say any of the expletive deleteds that I would come up with, but he is much like our president. He does not rely on science. I mean, the man is suing the city of Atlanta for saying that we want that Atlanta should wear masks. Who does that?
Now, I'm actually not familiar with the Atlanta mayor's response to COVID-19, but I did see her interviewed in regards to the race relations and the protests, and I was extremely impressed. What do you think of the mayor of Atlanta and her attitude so far?
First of all, she is positive for COVID too.
Okay.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, she's positive, and so is someone else in her family. But her response to the racial inequities, I think, has been spot on. I think she's been a strong force for the city of Atlanta and for the surrounding area, and I think she's got it together more than our governor does.
Well, that's interesting. David and Sophie, what about your governor? He's been in the news quite a bit, and some people have suggested he's almost had to backtrack from his previous attitudes in regards to masks and social distancing and businesses opening and things like that.
Right, he's learning, and I think he's eventually will end up closing some beaches and some other stuff. You're right, he will backtrack. He again was putting the economy ahead of personal health, but he realizes the numbers are going up all over the state, and so things change daily.
And what is this? Is it they're following just President Trump's lead? Is it something about the Republican Party not believing science? Help me. I watch Fox, I watch CNN, I watch MSNBC, but I'm not in the United States. I used to travel to New York City and to Florida on business all the time. I've been talking to lots of people. My life is quite strange because for the last numerous years, I've traveled every week. For the last 3 months, I haven't traveled at all. I think I was in the United States over 25 times last year. I have been in the States only 2 or 3 times this year. So my knowledge of what's going on in the United States of America is completely media related now versus personal experience. So tell me, please, what is it? Why are these governors making these decisions that are harming people's health, it would appear?
I think it's all due to the economy. They've lost so much revenue with the economy shut down for 2 months that it will be a long time before it's recovered.
And our states have to have balanced budgets.
Yeah.
And so, Governor Cuomo in New York, actually, I've been extremely impressed with his press conferences and his leadership. He's been calling for a lot more federal government assistance to states. Is that the right strategy?
Probably, but getting money out of Washington is a nightmare, I think. So I think he's barking up the wrong tree. He's going to have to do something else.
So what do you think is going to happen? Are we going to have close downs are we going to go back to shelter in place? Are we going to have close downs? Is the economy going to have to be, almost closed for a month to get this virus under control?
If we can't get it under control with everybody wearing masks and social distancing, I would say yes. Again, it changes every day.
And that's part of our problem, that it changes every day.
Yeah, I think that's my concern is I think that those states that, and primarily it's the southern U.S. as well as California, but and so in addition to your 2 states, I guess it's Texas and Arizona and California that are right now the ones that are the hot spots. They all closed late and opened early, and maybe for economic reasons, maybe because they were following Donald Trump's lead. But to think that you can bring back the economy when people aren't healthy and don't feel safe going out is wrong. You've got to feel safe going out. And, if my mom is right, that the second wave is actually going to be more lethal. It's interesting, as you probably know, in 1918, the second wave was actually more lethal than the first wave. And from a Canadian standpoint, it's kind of interesting. Canada didn't even get the first wave. Canada only got the second and third waves. And so there are some places that logically might actually miss out on a first wave and only get it when it spreads more widely this fall if we don't take action and socially distance, physically distance, wear masks, wash your hands, stay at home, such that it just can't spread.
Yeah, they really missed the mark when they thought the warmer weather would slow the progress of the disease. Because we're definitely in warm weather and it hadn't slowed anything down.
What about the hospitals, David? We're hearing scary stories about your ICUs getting close to capacity.
Yes, they are in Escambia County where we live. In fact, they're over capacity. They've started opening up other units. We've also got a federal National Guard unit that's coming in to set up a mobile hospital in Escambia County.
Really?
One
I
of
haven't
the
heard that.
that I used to work with actually had COVID himself. He didn't realize, he has no idea where he got it, but he's over it now. But that's pretty scary.
Yeah. Well, that's
close patient contact.
That's one of the realities, is that I think lots of people are getting it and have no idea, because either the testing is poor or low, and or you get the results back, in a week rather than in 24, 48 hours. You just don't know where you got it from, and the contact tracing is not there. And both in Canada and the United States, our attitudes toward contact tracing has been very different than the successful countries like Singapore, South Korea, Japan, et cetera, where once you're identified, you're told to isolate, and every single person you've been come in contact with is immediately notified and told to isolate as well. I don't know if you've got any attitude on this, but the border's been closed between Canada and the United States. Do you think it should stay closed, or should it be opened up?
Stay closed.
If I were you, I would keep it closed too.
You don't want us. You don't want us.
Well, that's an interesting, quick response from my mom, their aunt, but a slower, very positive response from the two of you as well.
Your brother Colin had difficulty getting to Nova Scotia. So, I mean, we've had areas that were pretty well closed off. And here they were driving Philip's car that had Nova Scotia license plates on it. They own a home, they own a business in Nova Scotia, but New Brunswick didn't want to let them go through.
Well, what about that in the United States? I understand that Governor Cuomo is telling people from Texas, at least, I'm not sure if elsewhere, but telling people from Texas that they come to New York State, that they have to isolate for 14 days. Is that the right strategy?
I think it is.
Same for Florida.
I have a niece who lives in Alexandria, Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C. And she and her two kids came to Florida to visit her parents. We all got to have a good visit, but her husband, who works in the Pentagon, could not come because Florida is off limits to their employees.
Makes sense. Well, this is an interesting conversation. We're going to take one final break and come back with some final comments. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour, Saga 960. I get to chat with some interesting people every night at 6 o'clock on 960 AM, and you can get on my podcasts on saga960am.ca. But tonight, it's really kind of interesting because I'm chatting with two of my cousins, David Ranney and Bruce Ranney, who are joined by their spouses, Valerie and Sophie, and their aunt, my mom, Flora Crombie from Ottawa. It's great to see all of you again. Thank you so much for joining us. I know that, actually, I'm not sure about you, Bruce, but David, you were in the marching band, weren't you?
And Bruce was too.
You were both marching bands. So sports has been a big part. Were both of you at Auburn University?
No, Bruce went to Vanderbilt.
So sports has been big in both your lives, at least from a marching band standpoint of sports. What do you think about sports and concerts and things like that, college and professional?
I think they'll be delayed.
I think they'll be canceled, David.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, what if you were
Possible.
going to college this year, wanting to play football or wanted to join the band, the marching band? Isn't that like if you lose out on a year of your 4-year career, that's huge.
Yeah.
Only if you want to go be a professional football player and get paid big bucks for it. If you just want to play football or be in the band, it's not like you're missing anything.
Do you think that the bands will still be able to practice in a socially distant manner?
No,
No?
no.
Band is going to be canceled this year.
Oh my gosh, that's terrible. And same thing with football and basketball and everything else?
Yeah, they haven't really decided in the Southeastern Conference yet, but I'm pretty sure it will be canceled. They claim they're going to play within the conference, but I don't think that'll happen with the current state of the virus.
So let me, before I let you go, ask you the other big issue that has been going on in the last couple of months in the United States has been an issue about race relations. And Atlanta, was on the news quite a bit with some of the protests and protests that actually turned into almost riots in downtown Atlanta. Tell me what you think about this, and tell me what you think about both your government's, both state and federal's response to these protests.
Well, as you know, there has been a racial inequity in the United States since its beginning, and we've had some difficulties, widespread difficulties. There is such a thing as white privilege, and I don't believe that most of us who are white are able to understand the inequities present in the people of color's background and experiences. And I think that's where a lot of our problems lie, the unwillingness to talk, listen, hear, and then act to change.
We don't get it.
Things. Yeah, we don't get it. And our leaders of certain states, and I don't think our leader at the top gets it either. So therein lies a problem.
So one of the things, Valerie, that really encouraged me was in a lot of these protests, at least that I saw from the media, were more than 50%, if not frankly, a lot more than 50% were young whites. So do your sons get it? Does the next generation get it? Do they understand it?
Well, I think it's true in our particular situation. Some of the people in my generation are still waking up to the fact, but I think our sons understand and get it. In fact, we were talking with our son today, who has a 4-year-old daughter. They were riding around the National Mall in Washington, D.C. and noticed the flags at half staff. And she wanted to know why granddaughter, wanted to know why they were at half staff. And they had a wonderful discussion on John Lewis and he has done for the country and why it was needed, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there will be some gains made. But as John Lewis said, he doesn't want changes or freedom gradually. He wants it now. And I don't blame them. I think that's the way many of them feel.
What about you, David and Sophie?
Our household believes that all lives matter, including the unborn. And we can sympathize with those that are identifying only the Black Lives Matter. But like John Lewis said, I think black, red, yellow, tan, they all matter. And we strongly believe in that.
Well, certainly that all matter. But I think that if Black lives don't matter, then nobody matters.
Well, that's
so
true.
Everybody has to matter.
That's true. I mean, as I said, I'm just parroting what John Lewis has said in the past. That it's not just Black Lives Matter. It's the red man, the Indian, the white man. I mean, all lives matter.
Now, Bruce, were you in university when Martin Luther King was killed?
Yes.
Tell me, is this different? Do you think that there's more chance for change now? Because I would have thought, the assassination of Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy, and that was what, 1968, would have been a catalyst for major change, but it wasn't. Is this potentially a different era and could be a catalyst for major change?
I think the change was started, but it wasn't persistent at that point in time. We got to get persistent change.
I would have thought having a black president like Obama would have changed things.
Well, it's a change that can't happen in a 4-year period or an 8-year period or a 20-year period. It's a change that will unfortunately have to happen gradually because
it has to be a generational thing, I think.
Generation.
Start with the children. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm encouraged because number one, you're suggesting, all of you, that you think the change is going to happen, and that it's going to happen, I think, with your sons and the next generation, even more so than it ever could have in the past. And my proof of it is how many young whites were in all those protests. And I thought that if they were just black only protests, it would have not had the same kind of impact. Anyway, Bruce and Valerie Ranney from Marietta, Georgia, outside of Atlanta, and David and Sophie Ranney from Pensacola, Florida, and Flora Crombie from Ottawa, Ontario. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Really appreciate it.
And our pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for getting us together. Good seeing you.
Thank you all very much. Good night, everybody. That's Brian Crombie on the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. Just to remind you, I'm on every Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock on 960 AM. You can get on my, you can stream it online at www.saga960am.ca, and you can get all my podcasts and video casts on my website, briancrombie.com. Have a great evening, everyone. Thanks. Good night.